Hello everyone, welcome to the 17-Mile Story Collection. Today we'll dive into the Immortal Cultivation Diary of the Young Zhao Sr. Uncle Five sighed and said, "Sister, giving that spot to your second brother. We all feel it's unfair to you. Zhao Bu was right just now. Huzi is stronger than Go Dan. Who knows, maybe the Immortal would have chosen him instead." Zhao Bu, with a smug grin, added fuel to the fire. "Hey, don't blame anyone else. This is all their own doing. My father and I tried to warn them, but did they listen? No. Stubborn as mules. Now they've hit a wall. Who can they blame but themselves?" Zhao Cheng, feeling uneasy, tried to speak up for Go Dan. But before he could finish, his father shot him a fierce glare. The boy froze, swallowed his words, and sighed softly. At that moment, Go Dan's aunt also let out a sigh. Then she spoke firmly. "Anyone who keeps bringing this up is going against my sister. This matter ends here. Go Dan wasn't chosen, it just means he wasn't destined for it. It has nothing to do with anyone else. Go Dan, don't take it to heart. If it really doesn't work out, just come with your aunt. I may not be able to speak for you in the immortal sex, but in the martial world, I can pull some strings. When the time comes, you and your brother Huzi can go together. I was planning to send him out to train anyway." The moment Zhao Bu heard that, he burst into laughter, sneering. "Go Dan, yeah, listen to your aunt. Go ahead. Just tell people you're a reject, an immortal didn't want you. Who knows, maybe they'll take pity and accept you right away." Slowly, Go Dan Zhao Sun lifted his head. His dark eyes swept coldly across the mocking faces of his relatives, finally locking on Zhao Bu. Word by word, he declared, "Zhao Bu, listen well. In this life, I, Zhao Sun, will set foot in the immortal sect. Every insult from you and your father, I'll remember them all." Zhao Bu smirked, ready to mock again, when suddenly, third aunt furrowed her brows and snapped. "You little brat. Say one more word, and I'll cripple you right here. I'll make you a fool for life, and let's see if the immortals still want you then." Zhao Bu's father's face changed instantly. He rushed forward, yanked his son behind him, and shouted, "Third sister, don't you dare." All around, the other relatives wore mocking smiles as if watching a play. But Go Dan's aunt threw back her head and laughed. A cold glint flashed in her eyes as she growled, "Oh, big brother, you're saying I wouldn't dare." Sensing the tension rising, Go Dan's father hurried forward, pulling his sister back. He pleaded, "Sister, listen to me. You still have elders and children at home. It's not worth it to fight for me. But your kindness, I'll remember it for life. Please just send me off. I'll take Go Dan home with his mother." Go Dan's aunt let out a cold laugh, glaring fiercely at their eldest brother. Then, after a long look at her second brother, she finally nodded. Holding Go Dan by the hand, she walked away together with his parents, leaving the grand estate behind. From afar, Zhao Sun could still hear the mocking voices of his relatives echoing in the courtyard. Before long, they were seated inside his aunt's carriage, heading back home. The ride was silent. Deep down, Go Dan's father was full of regret, saying he wasn't disappointed would be a lie. But this was his son. He sighed, then said softly, "Go Dan, this isn't the end. When I was cast out from a family, I was even more devastated than you. But I endured. You must too. Listen to me. Go home, focus on your studies. Next year's imperial exam, strive for a good result. And if you really don't want to study anymore, then go with your third aunt, clear your mind for a while." Go Dan's mother looked at her son with tearful eyes, her voice trembling with love and worry. "Go Dan, don't you dare do anything foolish. You're my only child. If something happened to you, I couldn't go on living. My boy, you must be strong." As she spoke, her tears streamed down uncontrollably. Zhao Sun looked at his parents, nodding gently. "Father, mother, don't worry. I won't do anything foolish. I already have a plan. You don't need to worry about me." His mother pulled him into her arms, whispering softly, "Go Dan, it's all in the past now. Let's not think about it anymore." In her warm embrace, the wounds in Zhao Sen's heart slowly began to heal. The past few days had drained him, physically and mentally. Exhaustion weighed heavy, and as the carriage rocked along the road, his eyes finally closed, and he drifted into sleep. He dreamed. In that dream, he had become an immortal, soaring through the skies with his parents, their laughter echoing across the sea of clouds. But dreams, always end. Late that night, Zhao Sun awoke in his small, familiar room. He let out a quiet sigh, and firm light flickered in his eyes. Before leaving, he turned and gazed deeply toward his parents' room. Then, he picked up brush and paper and left behind a letter. With enough food packed in his bag, Zhao Sun stepped outside, pushed the door open, and disappeared into the darkness of the night. In his heart, Zhao Sun swore to himself, "I will never give up on the path to immortality. Penglai Pavilion, I must try again. And even if they reject me once more, I'll find another immortal sect." Bathed in silver moonlight with starlight above, Zhao Sun carried his pack and left his mountain village. His shadow stretched long, fading into the distance. 3 days later, he was trudging along a lonely mountain path. He remembered vaguely the direction from when the young man surnamed Zhang had carried him away. Eastward, always eastward. Even as thorns and weeds cut open his legs, Zhao Sun pressed on without pause. A week later, he had ventured deep into the mountains. Though treacherous, the place held few man-eating beasts. Careful and determined, Zhao Sun pushed forward until at dawn he stood atop a solitary peak. There it was, shrouded in clouds, the mountain of Penglai Pavilion. Exhausted, he sat down, took out his dried rations, and ate a few bites. But his eyes never left that distant gate. His gaze was firm, unwavering. And then, a sound. Heavy breathing. Right behind him. Every hair on his body stood on end. Slowly, Zhao Sun turned his head, and his face went pale. A massive white tiger loomed before him. Its blood-red eyes gleamed with killing intent. Saliva dripped from its jaws, splattering on the ground with chilling plop. Plop. Sounds. With a thunderous roar, the beast lunged. Zhao Sun gave a bitter smile. Yet his eyes were steady. Without hesitation, he turned and leapt off the cliff. The wind howled in his ears, tearing at his body as he plummeted downward. In his mind flashed the gentle faces of his parents and the cruel mockery of his kin. Softly he whispered, "Father, Mother, your son is unfilial. This is farewell." Zhao Sen's body plummeted down the cliffside. Branches jutting from the rocks snapped one after another, echoing with sharp crack. Crack. Sounds as he fell. Then, just as he reached the middle of the cliff, a sudden, overwhelming force appeared. Without warning, a powerful suction yanked his body sideways, pulling him violently into a fissure in the cliff wall. His body slammed against the stone surface, pinned there by an invisible grip. Half conscious, Zhao Sun felt as if he were caught in a raging wind, dragged backward with unstoppable force. Time stretched endlessly, until at last the suction weakened, and with a heavy thud, he collapsed onto the cave floor. For a long while, he lay gasping, before finally struggling to his feet. His clothes were shredded into strips by the branches, his body covered in cuts and bruises. His right arm throbbed with unbearable pain, swollen grotesquely. Sweat poured from his forehead in thick beads. He touched it lightly, unable to tell if the bone was broken. But one thing was clear: this injury came from the brutal impact against the cave wall. After falling into a natural cave, he found himself surrounded by sunlight streaming through the entrance, but on the ground lay countless bones of birds and beasts, turning the place into a graveyard of death. When he turned around, he noticed something chilling: a fist-sized black hole in the wall. It was pitch dark, impossible to tell how deep it went. Zhao Sun quickly realized the terrifying truth: this must be the source of that mysterious force that had pulled him in earlier. And those bones scattered everywhere. They were likely victims, dragged inside just like him. As he was about to leave, clutching his injured arm, something horrifying happened. The bones on the ground started moving on their own, sliding toward the black hole. Suddenly, an unimaginably strong suction burst out, dragging the bones with a loud clatter. Even a bird that had just flown into the cave was yanked straight into the wall, smashing to pieces in an instant. Terrified, Zhao Sun didn't dare move. He hid in the corner, silently keeping track of time. After several cycles, he discovered the pattern. The suction lasted 1 full hour, then stopped for half an hour, before starting again. But even with this knowledge, he was trapped. When he finally limped to the cave entrance, what he saw made him bitterly laugh: a sheer cliff stretching down dozens of meters, with jagged rocks and thick forest below. With his arm badly injured, climbing was impossible. And if he jumped, certain death awaited. All Zhao Sen could do now was wait. Inside that cliffside cave, his food supplies were still on the mountain peak above. With nothing to eat, hunger quickly became his deadliest enemy. He kept track of the suction cycle, huddling in the corner, waiting. But as night fell, his body grew weaker. His arm had gone completely numb. With a bitter smile, Zhao Sen muttered to himself, "If I stay here, I'll starve. But if I jump, I'll definitely die. What a cruel choice." Then his eyes landed on something horrifying yet tempting, a mangled bird corpse that had been sucked in earlier. Hesitant at first, Zhao Sen finally gritted his teeth, picked it up, and brought it to his mouth. The stench was nauseating, but he shut his eyes and bit down hard. He didn't chew. He swallowed the raw meat in chunks, like a starving wolf. His stomach churned violently, waves of nausea rising, yet at the same time a strange warmth spread through his body, giving him a bit of strength back. By the time he had eaten half, he couldn't take it anymore. Gasping for air, he threw the bones aside and slumped against the wall. Memories flashed through his mind, his parents' faces, his aunt's kindness, his relatives' ridicule, and the cold gaze of that black-robed man from Punlai Pavilion. But then, something caught his eye. Right there, inside the half-eaten bird carcass, was something gleaming, a red orb, the size of a baby's fist. Stunned, Zhao Sen dug it out, his heart pounding. He remembered an old tale from a village schoolmaster. In the ancient Shanhai Jing, it was said that when certain creatures lived long enough, they could form a mysterious treasure inside their bodies. An inner core. Could it be that this bird was no ordinary animal, but a spirit beast that had condensed its very own inner pearl? He remembered something he once read in the ancient text Shanhai Jing, an inner core. A treasure said to grant incredible strength, extend life for centuries, and even regrow severed limbs. Back then, he laughed at such claims. But now, after meeting real immortals and digging out this strange orb from a bird's body, he could no longer dismiss it entirely. If this is truly an inner core, he thought, I could heal instantly, escape this place with ease, and even pass the immortal's test. But the orb felt hard, like stone, not something that could be swallowed. Frowning, he wiped it clean with a strip of cloth. What emerged was not a glowing pearl, but a gray stone bead, etched with 5 tiny white clouds. Ancient, mysterious, but far from the miraculous inner core he had imagined. Disappointment weighed on him. Still unwilling to give up, Zhao Sen even bit into it, only to find it unyielding. With a bitter laugh, he muttered, "Dan, you fool. How could it be so easy? What are the chances that a random bird falling before you would carry an inner core?" Resigned, he placed the stone bead beside some bones, curled up in the corner, and drifted into uneasy sleep. Outside, autumn's chill seeped into the cave. He shivered through the night. But when dawn broke and the first rays of sunlight spilled inside, something strange happened. The gray stone bead began to glisten. Droplets of dew seeped from its surface, gathering slowly, before trickling down onto the pile of bones beneath it. Not long after, Zhao Sen woke up, only to find his injured arm even more swollen than before. Leaning against the cold stone wall, despair filled his heart. Am I really going to die here? Trapped forever, he whispered to himself. But then, something caught his eye. On a pile of bones nearby, tiny droplets of dew shimmered in the dim light. Parched with thirst, he carefully lifted the bone and licked the droplets clean. The taste shocked him. It was sweet, refreshing, almost divine. A warmth spread through his body, soothing and comforting. Then came something even stranger. His injured arm suddenly tingled, as though itching from within. Zhao Sen blinked hard, staring at it, and to his amazement, the swelling had gone down. Heart pounding, he searched frantically for more dew, but none of the other bones carried any. That's when he realized the only bone with dew had been resting right beside the stone bead. Breath quickening, Zhao Sen picked up the bead. Sure enough, tiny droplets of water were forming on its surface. With trembling hands, he pressed the bead against his swollen arm, letting the dew roll down onto the wound. Instantly, a cool, soothing sensation spread through him. Before his very eyes, the swelling faded away. He flexed his arm. It still hurt a little, but the injury was almost gone. Eyes shining, Zhao Sen whispered in awe, "This stone bead. It's a treasure. In the days that followed, he survived by eating the birds that had crashed into the cave, but his focus was entirely on the bead. Each time dew formed, he carefully collected it, even using a bird's skull to store it. Slowly but surely, his arm healed completely. This mysterious dew was no ordinary water. On this day, Zhao Sen carefully soaked a strip of cloth with the dew he had collected and wrapped the precious stone bead inside. He hung it around his neck, tugged a few times to make sure it wouldn't fall, and then, while the strange suction weakened, he approached the cliff's edge. With gritted teeth, he tore most of his clothing into strips, tied them together, fastened one end to a rock, and the other around his waist before slowly climbing down. He managed to descend about 15 to 20 feet when suddenly, his hand slipped. His body plummeted. The makeshift rope jerked tight, swinging him violently. By sheer luck, he caught a branch, but the fabric tore, leaving the strip at his waist dangling precariously. Cold sweat poured down his face. Below him was still more than 60 feet of deadly drop. One hand clung to the branch while the other desperately retied the cloth. Only then did he dare to breathe again. Step by step, he edged down further until he was just a few yards from the bottom. But the rope had reached its limit. Without hesitation, Zhao Sen let go and leapt. The fabric snapped apart, slightly easing his fall. Branches cracked as he crashed through them before slamming into the ground. The rocks below were like knives, tearing into his body. Blood spilled everywhere. His right leg was pierced clean through by a sharp stone, bone gleaming white. His breath came in ragged gasps, his vision fading. With trembling hands, he pulled the bead-wrapped cloth from his neck, clenched it in his mouth, and sucked desperately at the moisture inside. Moments later, he managed to wring a few precious drops onto his wound. A cool sensation spread, numbing the pain slightly. He collapsed flat on the ground, silently praying no wild beasts would appear. And then, from a distance, a voice called out, "Gooden, where are you?" Zhao Sen froze. That voice, it was his father's. Summoning every ounce of strength, he shouted back, "Father, I'm here." Suddenly, a rainbow arc of light streaked across the sky, circling the cliff before plunging down. The sword light faded, revealing a disciple of the Penglai sect, carrying Zhao Sen's father under his arm. The man frowned deeply, his gaze falling upon Zhao Sen's broken, bloodied form. Tears streamed down his father's face as he threw himself beside Zhao Sen, holding him tightly. "Gooden, why would you do this to yourself? If you died, how could your mother and I go on living?" Zhao Sen froze. In an instant, he realized his father thought he had tried to take his own life. Looking down at his blood-stained, broken body, he could only give a bitter smile, unable to explain. The Penglai disciple glanced at Zhao Sen, then leapt upward. With just a few swift bounds, he reached the cliffside cave. Torn fabric strips fluttered in the wind, proof enough. A sudden surge of suction roared from the cave, but the disciple merely frowned, unshaken, before dropping lightly back down. He wasn't thrown off, the disciple declared coldly. Your boy tried to end his life, but the wind vortex here pulled him in, sparing him from death. Now that he's been found, the elders will decide his fate. With a flick of his sleeve, he swept Zhao Sen and his father into the air, flying them swiftly back toward the sect. Within moments, they stood again at the foot of Penglai's mountain, climbing the steps with ease. Back atop the peak, Zhao Sen's emotions were a storm. Several disciples stood waiting, their faces filled with disdain. The Penglai disciple leaned in to whisper to one of them, who frowned and said coldly, "He's been found. Take him to the guest room to see his mother." Inside the chamber, Zhao Sen's mother broke down in tears the instant she saw him, clutching him tightly, scolding and weeping all at once. Through his parents' recounting, Zhao Sen finally understood the truth. When he left home, his parents, terrified, sought help from his third aunt. Together, they pressured Zhao Bu's father, who reluctantly gathered the clan to petition Penglai sect directly. At first, the sect hadn't wanted to care. But if Zhao Sen truly died, word would spread. And then, fewer parents would ever dare send their children for testing. That would tarnish Penglai's authority. So, weighing reputation against apathy, they sent out a search party. Zhao Sen's father insisted on going with them, which led to the rescue. Soon after, medicine was brought. His mother gratefully thanked the disciple, then gently fed Zhao Sen the moment he drank, warmth coursed through him, his wounds eased, his body felt lighter. As his parents showered him with concern, Zhao Sen wanted to explain the truth. But deep down he knew they would never believe it. So he simply smiled bitterly and stayed silent. At that very moment, inside Peng Lai Sek's grand hall, several elders sat in council, listening as the disciple finished recounting how Zhao Sen had been found. No sooner had he finished than a red-faced elder slammed the table with fury. The life or death of a mortal, what does it matter to cultivators like us? Look at the sects of Qin. Which of them would disgrace themselves as we have? Sending men to fetch back a worthless boy who wasn't even chosen. Outrageous. The atmosphere grew heavy. A cold-faced middle-aged elder sighed and spoke solemnly. Elder Nyo speaks the truth. Across the land, only we of Peng Lai would lower ourselves so. But consider this, if the boy had truly died near our grounds, word would spread. Parents would whisper, "Fail the test, and your child may well seek death." Then tell me, who would dare send their children here again? Another elder, clad in embroidered robes, chuckled lightly, sipping his tea before replying at leisure. In the end, it's only because Peng Lai has declined. We're forced to harvest from mortals in search of talent. 500 years ago, would we have cared for such things? Mortal lives meant nothing then. From the corner, an aged elder, face carved with wrinkles, let out a long sigh. This boy has already sought death once. He may well try again, to spare ourselves future trouble. Let us bend the rules. Take him as a registered disciple. His words hung in the air. He cast a sidelong glance at the middle-aged elder, then closed his eyes, saying no more. In that hall, the elders exchanged looks of discontent, disdain, or indifference. None of them noticed this single decision had already set Zhao Sen on a path that would change his fate forever. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed my video, please leave a comment, give it a like, and share it with others. Your support gives me even more motivation.